everyone, and hello, humans. This is Not a Robot's Marvel Comics Weekly Review Podcast. My name is Kirk. My outfit for the Hellfire Gala will be made entirely of Wade Wilson's hair. And this week, I am joined by my co-host, Brandon.
Hello, everyone. I, unfortunately, do not have such a fabulous outfit for the Hellfire Gala, but I will be there and present for all of it.
This week, we are reviewing with full reviews on Spider-Man Curse of the Man-Thing, with a double feature on X-Men Curse of the Man-Thing. Then we've got Marauders number 20, Immortal Hulk 46, Heroes Reborn number 1, Amazing Spider-Man 65, Way of X number 1, and Beta Ray Bill number 2, followed by lightning reviews of America Chavez number 3, Sword number 5, Hellions 11, Eternals number 4, Champions number 6, and Black Knight Curse of the Ebony Blade number 2. Before we get going, I just want to say thank you to all of our Patreon supporters who help out with $1 or more a month. And thank you to our listeners too. Like, download, and share our episodes so we get more listeners and can bring you more content. You can get access to our Patreon and the rest of the Not a Robot podcast shows at notarobotpodcasts.com. You can catch us on Twitter at notarobotcomics, and you can send show mail to notarobotcomics@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Kirk Hopko. And with that, let's talk about the news. Brandon, has anything hit your news feed this week?
I mean, nothing too crazy. I've kind of been out of it for the past couple weeks just because I'd really had my head down and focused with finals. For anyone who listens to the DC podcast, you've already heard me ramble on about that. But I did notice that there was an announcement that there is development on a new Hulk movie, which we kind of talked about briefly at the end of the DC review show, even though we're a DC Comics podcast. And I was just kind of talking about how it would be really interesting to see them go for a horror angle if they were going to do a new solo Hulk movie. I don't know how you felt about that.
I think that would be super cool. I'm really interested in where they would take a new Hulk movie. Obviously, the current iteration of Hulk would lend itself to the traditional Marvel movie formula. You know, a slightly goofy with slightly serious overtones. Especially depending on what they do with the Hulk. If the Hulk movie is Banner's Hulk and not anything following up either the She-Hulk Disney Plus series that's coming next year or whatever may come after that. Heck, a Hulk TV series could even focus on an entirely new Hulk. We got
maybe a totally awesome Hulk. Wink, wink.
Right? We did get his mom guest appearing in Age of Ultron all those years ago. So we could get Amadeus Cho in here. He could get a movie.
Yeah, that's right.
But if they went a horror movie direction, I think that would be really cool. I wouldn't expect them to go that way.
Yeah, I guess just for me, because one of the most interesting titles I would say at Marvel right now is Immortal Hulk, and I guess I had never really thought of Hulk as being a horror-themed character until I started reading that book, and it seems like kind of an obvious comparison given how much Hulk and something like Jekyll and Hyde kind of go together. But it would just be really interesting to see them kind of explore that in a movie, and maybe really go into like the psychological stuff of having all these different Hulk personalities. Although again, I don't even know that's a thing in the MCU. I mean, because it seems like there's really just Banner and then the Hulk persona, and it doesn't seem like there's like a bunch of different personalities like there is in the comics. But we'll see. What about you, Kirk?
Yeah. No, sorry. I think for the Hulk, they kind of, they teased that like Planet Hulk type stuff was going on after he left in Age of Ultron and Ragnarok finally reintroduced him. But really, there's a few years there, and then there's the whole years between Infinity War and Endgame where Banner was alive, that they could definitely work in those blank years where Banner wasn't paying attention and could be surprised to know that, Oh, wait, he was Joe Fixit for a bit there.
Yeah.
In other news, I believe this past week is when we also got the Marvel Cinematic Universe title reveals for Black Panther 2 and the sequel to the Captain Marvel movie, which is now retitled The Marvels. Mm-hmm. And Black Panther 2 is now Black Panther Wakanda Forever.
Yeah, so, I saw that.
Those are both exciting news. It was good to finally hear a bit more on those, even if it's just a little bit. And
yeah, I would definitely say there's a lot of interesting stuff in the works, and I mean, I'm always hopeful that a Fantastic Four movie will be good, but I don't know. History has not been kind to the Fantastic Four movies.
Yeah, tragically, you are right, and I have gone on record that I am not the biggest advocate for the Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. My wife likes to tease me that if I could, like, circle Reed Richards' name in my notebook and then cross it out violently, like that's who I would be in the Marvel universe.
Oh, you're killing me over here.
No, me and Reed go way back. We just don't go way back positively all the time.
Oh God, no, I'm a really, really big Fantastic Four fan, and I don't know. I mean, I think on the one hand, it has to do with a lot of the stories because there are just a plethora of great Fantastic Four stories out there.
Absolutely.
But it's also kind of personal for me because Fantastic Four was kind of one of the first Marvel comics I ever got to read. Like, I remember back when I was like 9 or 10, my mom would take me to the Barnes & Noble near where we lived, and they had the little, comic section, and one of the first like Marvel books I ever got was Marvel Masterworks of Fantastic Four, and it was the same Marvel Masterworks that I got Stan Lee to sign at my first comic book convention in 2012, awesome. And so it's just like I just have like this really long history with the Four and like just reading stories like throughout my life. So I don't know, like I have this soft spot for the whole team, even Reed, who I think kind of can get a bad rap, but really that just depends on who's writing him, because like sometimes you'll have him and he's just a total asshole, and you're just like, why would anyone ever want to be near him? And then sometimes you'll have him where it's like John Byrne or Jonathan Hickman or some other writers or Mark Waid particularly, who kind of make him a bit more sympathetic, which I always appreciate, because I do feel like Reed can be very misunderstood at times, where he might seem like standoffish and kind of a jerk, but he still loves his family and would do anything to protect them. But yeah, I feel like my love of the Fantastic Four probably mirrors your love of the Champions, if I've read you correctly.
My love for the Champions is less long running. If I had to pick someone that that I read for years and years growing up, I am just sort of tried and true, a classic Avengers, X-Men kid, and Spider-Man, of course. I think everyone...
Oh, yeah, every kid's a Spider-Man kid.
Yeah, it's hard to not be. And that was the other thing, is I didn't read a lot of Fantastic Four until probably like 2005.
Okay.
And for anyone who's paying attention to what I was reading of Reed Richards in 2005...
Yeah.
It was not his best look.
Yeah, no. Especially, like right before Civil War, and then like right after Civil War is like not a good time.
Yeah, and then moving on from that, I was in my teens, so I was like, the Fantastic Four sucks. And then I didn't really look at them again until I was an adult. And like now I'll totally go on record that the Fantastic Four is absolutely fine. I actually do enjoy the Fantastic Four, and I have I have more fun with my joking sort of dislike of Reed.
Yeah.
Because I know if he was a person, we would not be friends. But everything else aside, it's fun, and I do look forward to seeing really a depiction of Doctor Doom on any screen.
Oh yeah.
Because Doom is one of my favorite villains, and that is a reason why I have rekindled any enjoyment I've had in the Fantastic Four is just because Doom is the best.
Doom is the absolute best. And I think especially it's funny to hear you say that about Reed, because I think especially given how the character of John Walker was portrayed in Falcon and Winter Soldier, I think if we were going to get any kind of Reed Richards, it would definitely be more sympathetic than some of the versions of Reed that we've seen in the past, because I know, at least from my understanding of John Walker in the comics, they definitely toned him down for the show, where he's not like, as abrasive, as horrible, as much of kind of a jerk. Like he still has that violent breakdown at points throughout the series, but he's not quite as bad, and you can feel a little bit sympathetic for him, or at least, I don't know, maybe some people can, I'm not sure, but I feel like if we were going to get any version of Reed, it would probably be more sympathetic, just seeing how they've handled some characters. I don't know. What did you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree on that they're it is likely they will do him more elegantly than the versions of Reed that I'm holding against him at this point, literally just for comedy. Like, I really don't dislike. I'm just hard on Reed for fun. But the other piece there is, I did read something online, and I'm not the voice who can weigh in on this properly, but someone showed some of those old panels where someone wrote that Reed self-diagnosed himself as on the Asperger's autism spectrum. And this piece that I was reading was talking about how, children who are on the spectrum related a lot to characters like Drax, who were sort of not able to pick up on social tics and social cues. And if they wrote a well-informed, from a place of, like, someone on the spectrum informing the writing, if they wrote Reed actually on the spectrum, leaning into what he claimed to be in the comics when it was just a throwaway line, if we're going to be honest. But if they wrote someone who, has the behaviors we associate with Reed, sort of diving into his work at the expense of his relationships and things like that, if they interpreted that as someone on the spectrum properly, I could totally see it going to a very different place than the Reed I have read growing up. And this article made a good case for it, and I could totally see a place for that in the MCU.
Oh yeah. Please share with me that article, because I think I know the comic you're talking about. I actually I pulled my copy of my trade off the shelf, because when you said Asperger's, it kind of struck a bell in my head, and it reminded me of a Fantastic Four miniseries from, I want to say, like 2001 or 2002, by Grant Morrison, of all people, called Fantastic Four 1, 2, 3, 4, where Sue kind of makes this offhand comment about Reed's kind of social ineptitude possibly being about Asperger's syndrome, and I could show you the panel once we're done recording, but it's I think that might be what you're talking about, and if that's the case, it would be interesting to see them try and explore that, because I think there is a really interesting story that you could tell, because you'll find that a lot of people do kind of suffer with that, what we would call social awkwardness, but for them it's just kind of a normal sense of how they interact with people. So, I definitely agree. I think if with the right group of writers handling that story, you could have something, really, really interesting and potentially really impactful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because, like, media has had a couple of those sort of non-conforming genius type characters get really popular in the past decade. Where we've got Dr. House, the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock Holmes, and Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, and Sheldon probably.
And in all of those cases, I believe, and I'm not sure on the BBC's Sherlock, actually, so don't quote me on this one, but people have commented that some of the behaviors of both House and Sheldon were informed by ideas of Asperger's, but they never really consulted any people with Asperger's to properly guide that conversation, and they never committed to actually identifying the character as that disorder.
Yeah.
So I think having, Reed be sort of this unrelatable genius that's very in line with Reed, but if they tie that into something representative, I think I would be really excited to see them go that direction with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there is there is one show recently, I think it was called like The Good Doctor or something.
Yes, that one was...
that had a kind of like a genius type doctor who, kind of struggles from, or is on the autism spectrum. And I don't know what the reception to that series was in its portrayal of autism, but I think there's definitely an interesting case you could make for Reed Richards. But anything else?
The last piece of news I have, this is unfortunately a bit too late for our viewers, but the Marvel United, which is a board game, just closed up a very successful Kickstarter for their Marvel United X-Men board game. So they are releasing an X-Men edition of the already popular Marvel United board game. If you are not familiar with these board games, it is a family-friendly, so it's very very simple. Like when I say family-friendly, I'm talking you can play it probably with a 6 or 7-year-old.
Yeah.
But it's a family-friendly board game where you play a team of superheroes working to thwart a supervillain in a location or in a city made up of a couple different location cards. That villain has a master plan and a couple different henchmen and plots that are going on in the city. And each player takes turns moving their hero around the city and either working towards stopping the master plan or working towards the day-to-day troubles of a hero. Like, you'll put that there are thugs in some location or civilians in danger in another, and you have to prioritize, do we save those civilians now, because we do have to save them eventually, or do I focus on punching Taskmaster?
Yeah, that sounds really fun, though.
It is, and the real highlight of the game is that it's a miniatures-based game, so it uses about 2.5 or about 2-inch tall plastic miniatures, and they are all chibi style, so they're all nice. Big head, very chubby little cute versions of themselves. I have the Marvel version, and the Captain America and Red Skull minis always just crack me up, because Cap is just, he looks like a really stoic chubby baby.
Yeah. Oh god.
But they're adorable, and the X-Men United just launched a massively successful Kickstarter, unlocked tons of stretch goals, so those of us who backed it are getting a veritable horde of X-Men miniatures.
Yeah.
Including, we got, at the very end, we unlocked the Alpha Flight, so I'm here for that.
Oh, awesome.
But that's the last I had for news, so...
Yeah, I don't have anything else. So very cool stuff coming out and also in the wind.
All right, so let's move on to the reviews. We are going to start with Spider-Man: Curse of the Man-Thing, written by Steve Orlando with artist Marco Fila, with Minkyu Jung, color by Guru Effects, and lettering by Clayton Cowles. This starts where Curse of the Man-Thing Avengers left off, where the Man-Thing has been converted into a weapon of global destruction by the Harrower. And we start with a handful of scenes of the Avengers in a variety of environments fighting off the Man-Thing's sort of corrupt plant body, which is turned into flying drones and towers of devastation, and is spreading those spores that the Man-Thing has, that if you show fear, they burst into flame and you experience a lot of pain. So the Avengers are doing their work, but this is Spider-Man: Curse of the Man-Thing. So we find that Spider-Man, because this is happening everywhere, New York is no exception. Both Peter and Miles, as well as a brief appearance from Silk and Spider-Woman and even Madam Web, all show up, and they are helping defend the world against the Man-Thing's invasion. And while they are working towards preventing that, it also cuts away that Steve Rogers, who we last discovered that had been sucked into the Man-Thing sort of psyche, because the man inside the Man-Thing, he ended up in this situation by trying to create super soldier serum.
Mhm.
Him and Cap exchange words, and he realizes that he lets on that he needs the help of Dr. Kurt Connors. Cap brings Kurt to the Man-Thing, who gets absorbed into the Man-Thing sort of realm. And that is when the Man-Thing sort of reveals a bit more about his past. He reveals that he had to make a deal with a devil in order to solve the super soldier serum.
Mhm.
And then discovers that Kurt Connors is the Lizard, which sets him off, and he freaks out that the Lizard is a monster just like him, that Kurt failed where he failed.
Mm.
And the culmination of this is that Spider-Man goes and talks to Ted, I believe his name is Ted Sallis.
Yeah, Ted Sallis.
Goes and talks to Ted in the Man-Thing realm, and we get what is, I think, a really cool Lizard moment where he believes that talking to the man in the monster is something that Spider-Man is good at. He acknowledges that as the Lizard, not just as Dr. Connors. And Spider-Man goes and addresses it, and action ensues, and the Man-Thing reabsorbs his drones and re-enters the fray. But before that, he goes to a mysterious location to once again summon a devil, who shows up at the very end, ready to make yet another deal with Ted Sallis.
Mm-hmm.
This was a cool book.
Yeah, I mean, for me at least, it was a little, I think, weaker than the first chapter. Because I remembered enjoying the first chapter a lot more than I had expected to. It felt kind of like, I think I said something like villain of the week, but it was fun in that way. And this one felt, I think, a little less focused at points, just because it was introducing more people. So now you have, Spider-Man and Kurt Connors and Miles Morales and all of this other stuff, and it just it felt like it lost me for a little bit, but not terrible by any means. It felt a little cluttered at points. I don't know how did you feel?
I completely agree. Yeah, I think this is a cool book, and I like what they're doing with the Man-Thing, because it's hard to, in most of his appearance, not just think of the Man-Thing as either a weird plot device or a Swamp Thing ripoff.
Yeah.
But in this one, I liked the arc that they're telling, but I guess the pacing of this one felt really weird to me, because it really was just the action scenes that we knew weren't going to be the turning point of any of the conflict in this book. Mm-hmm. When it shows Captain Marvel and it shows Ghost Rider and it shows them struggling against the invasion of the Man-Thing, we know that's not where the twist is going to happen.
Yeah.
This isn't the book where, T'Challa just turns around and says, "Oh, wait a minute, this is the secret the whole time," and solves the problem. This book is literally called Spider-Man Curse of the Man-Thing. So it sort of makes some of those feel a bit more like filler than they already are.
Yeah, and I think, at least for me, like, Spider-Man does kind of get his moment towards the end where he's really talking to, Ted Sallis and basically saying, like, hey, I've had moments where I've failed, but I took responsibility for it, and I basically was able to take that moment and turn my life around and do something with it. And I was like, that was a really good moment. I just wish it had come sooner, or we had gotten more moments like that between Spider-Man and Swamp Thing, because I feel like what you may be getting at is that, or kind of what you just said really, is that for an issue called Spider-Man Curse of the Man-Thing, it felt like it wasn't really focused on Spider-Man as much. It kind of felt like Spider-Man and Avengers Part 2 Curse of the Man Thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the notes I had on this book was that I thought it was weird that in this book we have three different characters kind of sucked into the Man Thing reality. Like, because that's really where the I'm going to call it this, and it's going to sound harsher than I mean it, but that's really the only place where the interesting version of the plot is happening in this book.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's, oh, Cap's in the realm. They talk. Cap's out. Okay, Kurt's in the realm. They talk. Oh, Kurt's out. Okay, now Pete's in the realm. They talk. Like, it was very jarring in that way that I think a lot of the revelation that he dropped on Captain America could have been said to Kurt or could have been said to Spider-Man without needing to break it up so much.
Yeah, or if they'd just like, if they'd stuck with those moments instead of, cutting it between moments of action with the Avengers or, the Order of the Web or all these other people, where it's like, it's almost distracting you and it's kind of hard to focus on one, just because like there's so much going on. And that was definitely something that I kind of was kind of a little frustrating for me, where it's just like it felt almost overwhelming, where there's all these different characters fighting off like the giant stalks, and then you basically have to juggle that and all the conversations that Ted has with the different characters, whether that's Captain America or Spider-Man or Dr. Connors. So yeah, it was a lot, and I didn't hate it. I felt like it was it was a solid continuing chapter. It felt weaker than the opening one and a little bit messier than I would have liked.
I agree. And especially since in my summary, like I'm now thinking about it, I didn't even really mention that there's the side plot of horticulture talking to the harrower.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my god.
just as a continued dialogue from the first book, just sort of, you know, we didn't teach you to be evil this way.
Yeah.
But so for this book, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Just, it's decent and it's good, and I think it might have been colored that I really enjoyed the first part, and I'm looking forward to it landing because I want them to do something cool with the Man Thing.
Yeah.
So maybe my 7 out of 10 is a little generous. It might be actually a 7.5 or a 6.5, but what did you think?
Yeah, no. 6.5 was what I ended up giving this issue, just because, like, again, I still find the Man Thing harrower plot to be interesting, but it just like I said, it was lost a little bit in this particular issue, just because they had to juggle all the new additions as well as trying to continue the plot from the last issue, and it didn't quite land for me.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I was coy about the demon showing up at the end because normally I wouldn't want to spoil that final panel twist, but we're going right into the next issue in this series.
Yeah.
So for those who haven't read and are still listening on, the devil that he summoned to make the deal with ended up being magic, and continued on in X-Men Curse of the Man Thing, which we'll jump right into, also from writer Steve Orlando, with artist Andrea Broccardo, coloring by Guru FX, and lettering by Clayton Cowles. Brandon, I'll hand this one over to you to summarize.
All right. We're just continuing on. So right from where Kirk left off, we basically catch up with Man Thing, who is basically startled to find that the demon that he summoned was not the one that he expected, but was magic instead. And magic is basically trying to chide him into action, saying like, well, I'm not the person that you wanted, but I'm here, and we better do something about it. And so meanwhile, we kind of jump around to a bunch of different plots where the harrower is following up from the last issue, where the two ladies of the horticulture had basically fallen into a mysterious portal in the water, and the Harrower is basically trying to find a way to breach through, but she finds that she can't get in for some reason, which we'll find out later. But she knows that this portal kind of stems to greater worlds beyond ours, which will help her in her plans as she basically wants to take her domination of the world multiversal. So we see a bunch of the heroes basically continue to fight off the stocks, given that the drones have stopped because Man-Thing has absorbed most of them. And from this point forward, they're basically just trying to contain the toxic pollen that's in the air that's basically causing people to turn on fire if they feel fear. So their strategy at this point is to basically try and show that they're winning, but to basically show that they're winning so that they can contain people's fear so that they, won't turn on fire, I guess. Meanwhile, on Krakoa, the Quiet Council is debating whether or not they should take action, given that when a stock erupted on Krakoa, it was immediately stopped by Krakoa itself and, didn't really pose any harm to them. And in fact, we actually see it kind of lying limp among the shrubbery in Krakoa, basically signaling that it really had no effect. But the Quiet Council is kind of, debating on whether or not to help the humans, and some of them feel that, they don't really have an obligation to do so because, they've kind of developed their own paradise, and it really wouldn't do to help humanity. But Storm is kind of the one who recommends that, they should take action to help the humans, given that if all the humans were to die by the hands of the Harrower and the Man-Thing, it would have an adverse effect on the mutants on Krakoa. And so they decided to put it to a vote. But meanwhile, we catch up with Magic and Man-Thing, and they kind of talk for a bit. Man-Thing absorbs Magic into his kind of special place where she is face to face with Dr. Ted Sallis, and that's where Ted kind of reveals the real origins on the deal that he made with Belasco, and basically how he used that to unlock the SO2 formula. And basically Ted and Magic just kind of talk about what further action to take moving forward. And that's where we get to meet Magic's helpers, who she calls the Dark Riders, who will basically kind of help Ted take the fight to the Harrower, and kind of get control back of his body and his actions. And so they catch up to the Harrower, and they engage her in battle for a little bit, and Ted is kind of able to absorb the Harrower into his mind place, and that's where she's basically confronted by the horrors of her past, which include not only the horticulture but also kind of the tragic origin that she was forced to deal with. And we also get some brief cuts to the X-Men, and well, not the X-Men, but Storm and the rest of the Avengers kind of taking care of action, and Storm has helped Thor and the others basically try to contain the pollen and basically redistribute it towards the sun. But meanwhile, Ted is still kind of psychologically terrorizing the Harrower to basically just kind of break her down, so that eventually she'll feel enough fear so that she'll erupt on fire and basically lose control of all the mystic powers of the Man-Thing. And that's basically where the Harrower ends up, where they're able to kind of stop the fire pollens and stop the Harrower, and eventually she's confronted by the actual horticulture, not just a vision, and basically telling her that some drastic action will be taken against her. So I'm sure that's not good. But shortly after, we see a woman by the name of Jennifer Kale, who basically uses a summoning to bring the demon Belasco from Hell to come face to face with the Man Thing, where Ted is finally getting to get his proper revenge on Belasco, and that's where our issue ends. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I enjoyed this chapter more than I enjoyed the Spider-Man chapter, just because it felt a little bit more focused on magic and Man Thing. And then finally, when we get to see Man Thing versus Hera, where we really get to focus on that. So this one kind of did more of what I had wanted from the Spider-Man issue, where you really just focus on the connection between two characters, as opposed to like a new group of people and they're constantly doing battle. And we still have scene transitions between the Avengers and all the other people trying to fight off the fire pollen, but this one definitely felt more focused, and I think kind of helped the series overall stick its landing. But how did you feel, Kurt?
Yeah, I like this better than the last one. I enjoy. I really enjoy Magic. Magic is a fun character,
Oh yeah,
especially when she is sort of taking over for Belasco's duties.
yeah,
And the scenes with her and the Dark Riders, or what did she call them? Her like monster self-improvement squad or something. Like,
yeah,
featuring like Marrow and oh, I'm struggling on their names right now. I'll have to look them up. But that was a really fun bit to have, and the characterization was a little bit better, and actually spending time with Harrower was better in this book
yeah.
than it was in the last two. Because in the last two, Harrower was just this new character, or as far as I can tell, was new, who shows up and says, I learned about plants from horticulture, except I'm a world-conquering terrorist.
Yeah.
And I'm going to blow everyone up. And then in the second book, horticulture was like, yo, don't do that. And she was like, no, I'm going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
And then in this book, they actually like gave some time to her, other than just being like an environmental eco-terrorist, I guess, is the best way to describe her. So I enjoyed it, and I enjoy sort of Ted Salus and Man-Thing regaining some level of agency.
Yeah. Yeah, that was nice.
Because that's always been the thing for Man-Thing that makes him more of a plot element in most stories I read him in than actually a character. Is they always say, oh, Man-Thing is just a ball of instincts and reactions, so he kind of just lumbers around and maybe accidentally kills a super villain or something. Like,
Yeah.
he's never part of deliberate action.
Yeah, but this kind of gives him, like you said, the agency that he really needs, where he can actually, I mean, seemingly, yeah, he can get, revenge on Belasco and take action for himself, as opposed to just kind of lumbering around in a swamp.
Yeah, and then I did like, though I think it's still a bit weird, because the way they haven't really like found an answer to this that I love. Since Krakoa, all of the global events that have been world-ending events, we've had Empire, King in Black, and this isn't an event, but this was a world-ending event in the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
But the Quiet Council is just sitting there like, I don't know, do we help people? We're kind of fine. As if, like, world exterminating events, I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me that the X-Men have completely abandoned the notion of saving Earth.
Yeah, I think I think at this point they're kind of like, or at least some of the members of the Quiet Council are just kind of like, if it doesn't really affect us, what purpose would it serve? But I think, there's still those like strike teams or small teams that can basically be used to combat an enemy if they need to. Like when the Kotati kind of sent agents to Krakoa and also to the ruins of Genosha, they were still able to send people there. And even during King in Black, when it was attacking like Manhattan, Professor X and Magneto were still able to send like Jean and Cyclops and Wolverine and Cable and other mutants to kind of help. But yeah, I guess it just depends, because that does seem a little weird that they're just kind of so blasé about it, or they're just like, whatever, If it's not affecting us, for what?
Exactly, yeah. It's so weird to me because the inclusion of that scene, and maybe it is part of some long-term X strategy that they haven't quite laid out yet.
Yeah.
But if this X-Men tie-in really just focused on the fight, maybe the one shot of how Krakoa prevented the stalk from erupting, and then focus more on the magic story arc, I would have been completely fine. But the fact that they had to show a scene of the Quiet Council being like, no, tut-tut, why would we save the Earth?
Yeah, exactly.
That's where I'm like, okay, what long-term purpose does this serve other than just trying to convince me that the Krakoan Quiet Council are a bunch of, like, dweebs?
Exactly.
But I did enjoy this issue. I gave X-Men Curse of the Man-Thing a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, no, I also gave this one a 7.5 out of 10. I had a much more enjoyable time with this one than the previous issue, and I found it to be kind of a solid series overall, even if it did have kind of a weak middle.
Awesome. So next on our list, we've got Marauders issue 20 by writer Jerry Duggan, artist Stefano Caselli, color by Edgar Delgado, and lettering by Corey Petit. Marauders number 20 is almost like an anthology comic. Mm-hmm. This one tunes in leading up to the Hellfire Gala, where they are all aboard the ship and they are preparing for the Hellfire Gala, sort of mentally, I suppose.
Yeah.
But they are preparing for it with a casual drink around the table and a send-off for Storm, who is leaving their crew. And they all share their best memories of time with Storm. And we get, shots of Bishop using literally just rain and claiming that Storm is watching to get some soldiers to bow down. We get scenes of Storm assisting Kate Pryde when, she was going through tough times, when she didn't know if she was even a mutant. We get shots of Storm just being a badass, throwing knives, and that's the other ongoing joke.
I loved the. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead, please.
Cut in, but I loved the. I love the little side plot of the game that they have, where they're just like, how many knives does Storm have? Because that's like totally, like, I feel like that's totally a game that you would play if you were kind of like on friendly terms with Storm, because she definitely, like, she's well known for her use of knives, and they're they're all just trying to figure it out.
Right, absolutely. In terms of major plot developments, though, this one doesn't cover a lot. It shows, like I said, these memories of Storm. We get Bishop, Iceman, Pyro, all just sharing events from Storm's past. We even get Emma Frost touching briefly on the fact that losing to Storm sometimes even feels like the right decision.
Yeah.
And it the story literally just culminates with them preparing to go to the Hellfire Gala. Mm-hmm. There's a brief conversation with Shaw on board the deck of the ship, and that's it. I don't think a lot happened in this book, but it was an enjoyable read. What did you think?
Yeah, it was a pretty quick read, at least for me. And I mean, I definitely liked the Marauders. The Marauders is, I don't know what the plural for that would be, or the plural possessive, but I liked the team's reflection on Storm as a person and how it relates to each of them. And I really liked that it was able to highlight all these really, I guess, powerful moments. Even with, someone like Callisto, who we don't really get to see the full moment, but that they have like such a rich past together that you really don't need to see like any particular moment. You just know it's there when it matters. And it was kind of the same thing with Emma too, where it's like, she's kind of talking about the last time I tried to mess with Storm's mind and look and see, what was there. I paid the price for it, and that kind of tells you everything you need to know about Storm's relationship with Emma and vice versa. So I think as kind of like a character reflection, it did a really great job of that. But yeah, in terms of advancing the story, not a ton happened. We find out that an old flame of Sebastian Shaw and member of the Hellfire Club is likely to be resurrected soon. But yeah, outside of that, not a ton. But I did have a solid job with. I did have a solid time with this issue, and so I ended up giving it a 7.75 out of 10.
Awesome. Yeah, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10 for just a pleasant collection of stories. Mm. It was good to see Storm being awesome and to have that bit of camaraderie that we expect from a team like this.
Yeah.
A bit of a nonchalance. And I'm excited to see what's coming next for the Marauders, because I think it's going to be some pretty serious stuff going on in the next few issues.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't assume we're going to spend the entire month of June just everyone having a very pleasant party where nothing bad happens.
Oh, yeah. No, there's definitely some stuff in the works for sure. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the cover, just because I absolutely love this cover by Russell Dauterman. Mm-hmm. Just such a great throwback to like the mid to late 80s X-Men, where you've got, Kitty Pryde in her blue Shadow Cat outfit and Storm in the punk outfit, and like it's just so great. And kind of that image of Storm on the beach looking up with like these old shadows kind of looking over her and of the good times, and I feel like it should be symbolic of the fact that even though there's so much change going on with Krakoa, or rather there's been so much change in, I guess almost 2 years, things are, the X-Men are still the X-Men. Like, they still have their past. They still remember a lot. And I think this issue did a great job of kind of reminding us of that, of like, even at their heart and soul, they still have their memories of who they are. They're still the X-Men and the mutants that we love and know.
Absolutely, yeah. I couldn't have said that better myself. Mm. All right. Next on our list, you know it. If you've been reading it, you probably love it. And if you've been listening to us, we love it. We have Immortal Hulk number 46, brought to us by the Al Ewing, with pencils by Joe Bennett, ink by Rui Jose and Bellardino Bravo, and color by Paul Mountis, and lettering by Corey Petit. For the summary, I'm going to hand it over to Brandon.
All right. Every month there's Immortal Hulk. It is a pleasure, so I love getting a chance to do this. But this issue is actually a little bit shorter. Not a ton happened, or at least not a ton of major stuff. So we catch up with the Gamma Flight team, who are currently in Shadow Base right now, the ruined Shadow Base, basically trying to find Doc Samson's body that had been basically destroyed by the gamma fused version of Rick Jones and Del Fry. And they basically realize that, his body just isn't there, and has gone missing. And it's Doc Samson as Sasquatch, or I guess Doc Sasquatch is what they're calling him now. I forget, but basically determines that Lankowski has now inhabited the body of Doc Samson, which we saw in the last issue basically get into a car and hitch a ride. But we basically catch up with the Gamma Flight team, and they're able to kind of, reflect on everything that had happened, as well as listen to a quick radio broadcast about the UFOs taking down the Hulk and catching up with the merge of Rick Jones and Delphi, which I have to say is just absolutely terrifying because you can actually kind of see them basically sharing thoughts, but also trying to think separately, which they're struggling with, and it's just this really horrific imagery of them merged together, trying to speak, basically. But so that's when we go to New Jersey, where the newly resurrected Gray Hulk, pumped full of cosmic energy, is basically giving the UFOs a royal smackdown, and he basically takes down Ironclad and breaks his arm and folds him, and he, sucks up Vapor, who basically tries to attack him, and he basically breathes in Vapor, holds her in his lungs, and then breathes it out at I think his name is X-Ray, and he basically just annihilates his face and infects it with Vapor's noxious gas, and that's when Vector kind of panics and basically just whisks Banner away, and he's flying through the air, and that's when Peter Garrett basically checks in and finds out that they got totally smacked on, so he decides that better to work with the devils that you do know, and decides it might be time to call in the Avengers. And we pick up with good old Bruce, or I guess it's Joe Fixit actually, as Hulk now, in a bar, joyfully reciting some lines from Cheers, as he asks the bartender for a drink, and is basically just like, calm down, man, like, I'm not gonna hurt you, I'm just here to get a drink and just calm down. And that's when he gets a face full of hammer from Thor, who is basically telling Hulk that he needs to come in, and if he tries to fight, he'll be facing the all power of Thor, and he's pontificating and everything, and Joe just isn't having it. He just does not care. He's like, dude, you are just not whatever. And so that is when they kind of fight for a little bit in the bar, and Joe basically knocks Thor through the bar window, and he climbs out to see the Avengers in full view, basically ready to take him down. And he's basically being antagonized by the Avengers, who say, it doesn't really matter how much trouble you cause. There's a whole bunch of us, and there's just one of you. And that's when we get our mysterious savior, who I will not name, but who will basically be coming to Bruce or Joe's rescue in the next issue. So I don't know about you, but and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but Immortal Hulk is just so awesome, and seeing the cosmic irradiated Hulk just absolutely smack down the UFOs after the issue where he basically had the same thing happen to him was really satisfying, probably disturbingly so. The fact that I took such delight in the UFOs just getting absolutely wrecked, especially Ironclad, who basically had his hand folded. Man. I don't know, just really satisfying to me, and kind of seeing Joe as this big, gray cosmic Hulk who just does not give a crap, walk into the bar and recite Cheers lyrics, and it's just I'm just here to get a drink, man, come on, relax. And it was just a really solid continuing issue, and I had a lot of fun reading it. And as always, the art by Joe Bennett is absolutely phenomenal. I really like his version of Thor, the double page spread in particular, where Thor is throwing his hammer and it kind of is knocking Joe's chin, is just really impressive looking. So in case you couldn't tell, I absolutely love this issue, and I ended up giving it an 8.5. Actually, no, an 8.75 out of 10.
Awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed this issue as well. I pretty much agree on all counts, especially, the only thing that I wrote in my notes, and it might have just been because I read this late at night, and I guess the only thing I wrote in my notes was just that, like, heck yeah, stomping the UFOs.
Heck yeah.
And because, like, that did resonate with me, because not only is it, like you said, maybe a bit too satisfying, but 2 issues ago, we were seeing not just the UFOs beating the Hulk, we were seeing them enjoying beating the Hulk.
Yeah.
Which was, I think, what made this so satisfying. Because they weren't just like a group of people who were, oh, we gotta stop the Hulk to get paid. Oh, we gotta stop the Hulk because it's right. We gotta stop the Hulk for XYZ. It was, we gotta enjoy beating this weakened, tragic Hulk.
Exactly.
And that's where, it's like, okay, you guys are dicks. I get it. And then so when Joe Fixit comes out and he's just like, yeah, I'm a dick too. It's like everything about it is deserved. It feels good. The lines in the bar, you nailed it. They're so funny.
Yeah.
The tone is right. The Avengers showing up is going to be an interesting culmination to all this. Like I really liked it as a next step issue. I gave this one a 9 out of 10.
Awesome.
Next on our list is the start of the Heroes Reborn event with Heroes Reborn #1, brought to us by writer Jason Aaron, pencils by Ed McGuinness, inks by Mark Morales, color by Matthew Wilson, and lettering by Corey Petit. With this one, because it is the start of a big event, I'm not going to go too deep onto the summary here, because there's a good chance, something in the next 12 issues of Heroes Reborn is going to want to catch someone's eye. So I'm really going to do a high level. Mm-hmm. With this one, we find ourselves following Blade in an alternate universe. It seems that Blade is the only one here who remembers the 616 continuity. He has looked around for the heroes that he recognizes. He has found that Tony never got hurt and therefore is still an arms dealer. Jen Walters is still just a lawyer who runs a successful practice. Bruce did become the Hulk, but was banished to the negative zone. Carol Danvers is just a fighter pilot. And Robbie Reyes is just a kid. So, in exploring this world and trying to figure out what's different, there's no Avengers Mountain. Everything has changed, but there are still heroes. And we spend some time getting to see the Squadron Supreme. We get to see Hyperion, Nighthawk, Princess Power, Dr. Spectrum, and Blur sort of fighting a variety of alternate universe villains, such as Doctor Doom with the Gem of Satorak becoming Dr. Juggernaut, Red Skull with the Venom symbiote, Quicksilver and Wanda, or Quicksilver's powers have been fused into Wanda, so she is now the Silver Witch, and several more alternate continuities. And we get to see this, and we get to see Blade interact with one of the members of the Squadron Supreme on his quest to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
We get to see President Coulson being very sinister. And we get to see Blade at the very end take a walk to try and find what he believes is the true difference between these two timelines. Mm. He's looking for the Avenger who was never found. And that's all I'm going to touch on that in terms of plot.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of my actual thoughts on this issue, maybe I'm a little harsh critic on this. I found that this was a oversized issue. It was, I think, 39 pages. Mm-hmm. With a lot of cool shots, seeing Princess Power fight Algog and Dr. Spectrum fighting in space. Nice, beautiful, beautiful art. Very nice to look at. But ultimately, this was a boring comic.
Yeah. I mean, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah.
No, absolutely. Go ahead.
It did not really capture me in the way that I thought. And if I'm being honest, it felt a little derivative of House of M, where you have, strange new world of, altered histories of your favorite heroes, except one person remembers it. Except this time, instead of it being Wolverine, it's, it's Blade. And, yeah, I don't know. It did not blow me away. It was serviceable, and alternate universe stories can be fun, but it just, yeah, it really was not like all that interesting, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and that's really the thing is, I think to me, the thing that makes alternate history and alternate universes more interesting is seeing the characters that we are passionate about already
Yeah.
recast in a new light. And the biggest thing with this one is it recast all of our favorite Avengers as non-existent.
Yeah.
Tony is lame. Carol is unremarkable. Jenny doesn't even appear in the panel. She's just a text box that says she's a lawyer. And so all of these issues, like, we're not seeing cool alternate universe Avengers. We're not seeing what happened to Iron Man in this timeline that made him unique or different. We're just seeing, world without Iron Man.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're spending 40 pages on that. And this is, this is technically a minor thing, but they really steered into the Squadron Supreme being straight DC ripoffs.
Very much like the Justice League. Like, almost annoyingly so.
Specifically, I think the biggest offender here is Princess Power.
Yeah.
She is drawn as Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Like, just, and no attempt made to make her look any different at all.
Yeah, no. And I think it definitely hits worse for me because I've seen Ed McGuinness do the Trinity before, and it is like, seriously, it really is like the exact same thing. Even Whizzer, whose costume is, his color scheme is different from Flash, but it is like facial features, movements, it is like exactly like the Justice League.
Yeah, that was the thing. A lot of this comic fell flat, and it was a lot of Blade monologuing, just sort of narrating what he has found that's different. And it just didn't grab me. I ended up getting to the end of it and kind of wishing that it had found a way to cram this into a little quicker. Specifically, I think we had a shot of each of the Squadron Supreme members fighting a separate villain.
Yeah.
Which I guess was to tease that this is the alternate universe. Hyperion versus Dr. Juggernaut, Princess Power versus Algog, Silver Witch, etc.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we got one panel of each of those villains, and we didn't get any characterization of the members of the squadron except for Nighthawk.
Yeah, and that for me definitely felt like a little, like, if this is your new team in this new reality, I feel like you kind of need more information about them outside of they look and act like the Justice League. Like, you can't just kind of go off of that and expect people to just roll with it, I guess. Although I don't know, maybe that's what they were going for. But yeah, I really would have liked to have seen kind of like, I don't know, more characterization of them as a team, or maybe a little more individually. It felt like they just kind of do whatever they do, and that's it. Like, Wizard does this, Dr. Spectrum does that. Really, like you said, the only one we really get any kind of characterization and background on, or at least more information about, who he is and his mannerisms is Nighthawk, and that was unfortunate.
Yeah, so this comic, I'm not going to say that it condemns the Heroes Reborn event, because this one's going to be going on for a little bit now, and they've got quite a few tie-ins. Some of them might be good, some of them might not. they've at the end of this issue they put a couple teasers of like concept art of some of the other Heroes Reborn teams. I can't remember the name offhand. I didn't put it in my notes, but we see what this world's equivalent of Alpha Flight is.
Yeah.
We see a couple glimpses of redesigns in there. We see, I think it's supposed to be the Champions is replaced by, I think it's called like the Young Squadron or the Young Supreme.
Yeah, the Young Squadron, and they have kind of the X-Men like team, the Mutant Force, in addition to a Weapon X team that will work, I think, alongside this version of Alpha Flight as well as kind of it being its own thing of Weapon X. But and then we do see in kind of like the teaser images sort of towards the end, where I'm assuming it's showing things that are going to happen in the future, possibly more to do with the Doctor Doom Juggernaut and possibly Captain America escaping the ice, and maybe some other stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It just I wish I could say I was more excited about this one, and flipping through this comic, because I remember thinking, wow, this really does look like the Justice League, just like you said. But I mean, really looking at some of the panels with Nighthawk, especially when when you see him from the back, he looks just like Batman. And like I've seen, like I said, I've seen Ed McGuinness draw the Trinity. I've seen Ed McGuinness do Batman, Superman, because he did that comic with Jeff Loeb for a little bit. But it's almost uncomfortable how much he looks like Batman from the back, especially with the ears.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
So with this one, because of its length, and despite the fact that the art was really good, I just couldn't get into it, and I couldn't really recommend this as a thrilling read. I gave this one a 5.5 out of 10.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, I actually rated this one a little higher. I ended up giving it a 6.5 out of 10 just because I did really like the art from Ed McGuinness. And I like I said, I enjoy a fun alternate universe premise, but like I said, the execution just wasn't there for me.
Awesome. So next we'll go to Amazing Spider-Man number 65, brought to us by Nick Spencer on writing, art by Federico Vicentini and Federico Sabatini, color by Alex Sinclair, and lettering by Joe Caramagna. Brandon, what happened in this issue?
So this issue basically just almost resolves the whole Randy Beetle being kidnapped by Crime Master and Madame Mask plot, I guess you could call it, where we finally get to see Randy and Tombstone team up. Randy and Tombstone, where we get to see Robbie Robertson and Tombstone team up and basically try and figure out where their children are, and they have some nice moments where they kind of relate to being a parent and how that can be frustrating because they feel like their children aren't doing what they ask, and it can be a little annoying, but they still love them in their own way. Meanwhile, we're still continuing the subplot with Kingpin, Baron Mordo, and Kindred, where Kingpin has basically been using Baron Mordo to try and pry information out of Kindred, and he's just really been laying on the mystical heat. And in this particular scene, we see Kindred actually kind of break a little bit and beg Norman to give him help. And when Norman basically, tells Kingpin to stop and, kind of threatens him a little bit, that's when you would expect there to be a kind of a softer moment between Kindred and Norman, but Kindred still kind of bears those grudges, basically saying that anytime that I tried to ask for help, I basically never really received anything, and you never really listened to me. So that just kind of helps to continue that story and also tie it up a little bit. But meanwhile, with the Crime Master and Madame Mask, they have basically just been talking about what they're going to do when Tombstone and Robbie Robertson show up, and um, that's when they basically revealed that the empty warehouse that they'd kind of been walking through had been a mirage, and basically reveals that the uh, informant that they had kind of shook down in the last issue, Mirage, had basically ratted them out to Crime Master and Madame Mask, and that kind of gives them the opportunity, to kind of bring in some reinforcements to kind of shut down Robbie and Tombstone. But unfortunately, as Spider-Man's still trying to make his way uptown to get to the hideout, that's when Tombstone basically reveals that he called his own backup, and it's the new Sinister Syndicate, featuring the kind of all-female cast of some of Spider-Man's villains, like the female Elektra and the Trapster and White Rabbit and so forth. So they basically spent some time fighting with the Crime Master and Madame Mask's goons, and basically wrap that whole thing up and are basically able to shut them down. And Spider-Man shows up sort of towards the end and is able to assist and work alongside the Syndicate, which they're not too happy about. But ultimately, they're able to save Randy and Beetle, and that's when the two basically reveal that they'll be moving in together, which I'm sure is not going to be very good for Spider-Man. But basically, Norman checks into Ravencroft briefly, and we see him basically free someone, but we're not sure who that is, and that'll likely build up in the next arc. And we also catch up with Pete, who's checking in with MJ and Gog, and are basically talking about where Boomerang might have gone, because he basically left a letter in the last issue saying that he was going to go off to try and find the last pieces of the Lifeline tablet by himself, because he didn't want to put Pete in danger. And that's when Gog is basically able to sniff out one of Boomerang's boomerangs to basically try and track down where he is. And even though he knows that Fred is probably going to be in some trouble, and he's definitely going to need some help, he decides to call in some backup, some very serious backup, as he calls it, and basically calls an old reunion of some very, very dear friends of his, and I won't spoil who those are, but I'll say, if you are an Avengers fan, more specifically if you're an Avengers fan of the last 15, 16 years or so, I think you'll be very, very happy with this reunion. I know I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think that this arc, the King's Ransom one, has been a serious improvement from the, I guess, previous arc, Last Remains, which did not have an ending and left me really cold and angry. And this one has felt kind of more in line with the arcs that Nick Spencer has done that I've actually really enjoyed. And I think I've actually had a lot more fun with the last two issues than I've had with Spider-Man in a while. I think not only does the artwork really lend itself to kind of like the fun and free tone of the book, but it's also just kind of nice to see Pete have to confront some of these lesser villains and really try and create an interesting story with it, and also trying to create interesting stories with Pete's supporting cast, like with Tombstone, like with Robbie Robertson, and all these other characters. So I actually had a pretty fun time with it. What did you think, Kirk?
Yeah, I'm enjoying this arc in the Amazing Spider-Man series. I like his new live streaming digs.
Yeah.
I love just the one panel where JJ is leaning back in his chair, looking at his phone, watching through Spider-Man's eyes.
Yeah.
It cracks me up to imagine that as something happening, because the JJ that we've known for so long, just relaxing and watching some casual Spider-Man live feed,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
great.
It's so crazy. And then, having Spidey team up with the Syndicate against Madame Mask was a fun bit. I like them spending time together, and then the calling in backup at the end. And I just want to say, the art by both of the Federicos. That last panel, I know we're not spoiling who's been called in for backup, but the way they were drawn, it is a beautiful shot.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And this is also a really silly thing, because I do like that live streaming getup. I like his new look, for as long as they keep it stuck around. But I gotta say, I'm honestly pretty excited for when they make another Spider-Man video game, and I get to I get to unlock that costume.
That would be so great if, like, I don't know if you've ever played Arkham City or like any of the Arkham games.
I've played Arkham Asylum and City. I didn't get around to the other two, but
Okay,
I've heard they're good.
Yeah, no. So both games have great main stories, but they also have some really fun like DLC campaigns. And just like thinking of having the live stream suit in a video game made me think of having, like, the next time they do a big Spider-Man game for a main console, they have a DLC where it features like you, but you're basically wearing the live streaming suit, and you have to like interact with fans and that sort of thing. Like it would just be a really fun DLC campaign, and like I would totally be down for something like that. But yeah, no, I'd be totally stoked to see this in another one.
I also think it would be really hilarious if, just as like a touch to the suit, if you wore it in a video game and they had JJ's voice like spouting out like, take that dirtbag, as you're like punching people, just have JJ like, yeah, get him.
Yeah. Say another one-liner, Spidey. Oh my god, that'd be so much fun.
Yeah. So, and that's a weird thing to see, but honestly, half of Spider-Man video games are like unlocking all the iconic suits, and then all of the sub-iconic ones that were maybe around for just a little bit. And this is one of those suits that I think it looks good, and I'll be excited to see it come back just a fun gag.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But as far as the issue goes, I had a good time with it. I liked this a lot better than the last arc, and I'm interested to see what Norman's doing. I'm interested to see, what this is building up to. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I know for me at least, like I just really like want this Kindred thing to be over. Like for me, the most fun parts of Nick Spencer's run on Amazing Spider-Man have been him doing like these kind of fun short arcs involving lesser known Spider-Man characters that really just humanize Pete in a way. The bigger arcs with Kindred, like sometimes they can be okay, but more often than not they just are hit or miss. Like Last Remains had some solid moments, I'll admit, but the fact that it kept going on and it never really resolved the Kindred thing, even though everyone was waiting for it, it was just really frustrating. So I'm almost at this point, I'm just like, just please just get it over with so we can just enjoy other stories. Because like every time I see that subplot, I'm just like, ugh, how long is this going to go on?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well,
literally, like I've been reading this book for 3 years, and we still have no idea what the full Kindred story is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing, and it reminds me a little of sort of a smaller, less offensive, but still present version of what happened with the Clone Saga.
Yeah.
Where they started putting these things that were, oh, what's going to happen? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? What's the real story? And then just those like questions became enough of a mimetic, like viral marketing that they just didn't feel the need to resolve it in any reasonable amount of time. And I feel with just how much they were pushing Kindred all over the place. Kindred was on their news feeds all the comic book news websites were like, who's Kindred? What's he
Yeah.
doing? What's going on? You know, and like they blew him up as he's this big, big, big deal. But there hasn't been a big, big, big resolution to that.
Exactly. And that's where my frustration was kind of coming from, where I'm just like, if you could just resolve it and get it over with, I would be satisfied and we could just enjoy these kind of fun arcs on their own. But the fact that we kind of have to keep bringing it up and never really getting a proper resolution, it's grating. Mm-hmm. But aside from that, like I said, I had a really fun time with this issue.
Yeah, me too. I gave this one a 7.5 out of 10. How about you?
I ended up giving this one an 8 out of 10.
Awesome. All right. We're going to take a quick pause for the cause here and go to a short commercial break. And we're back. Coming up next on our list is Way of X #1. This is brought to us by writer C. Spurrier, artist Bob Quinn, color by Hava Tartaglia, and lettering by Clayton Cowles. Way of X #1 starts us on a new arc in X-Men following Nightcrawler and sort of his ongoing tribulations with where we left him off in the issue of the X-Men comic featuring the Crucible.
#7, I think.
#7, yes. This one starts with him. I guess this one starts with Xavier giving him sort of a telepathic call early in the morning to discover that he and some other mutants have gone on a raid of essentially a museum of mutant atrocities to try and uncover an operation where they are training anti-mutant fanatics. And they fight against them. They find out what they're doing. They discover that they're training these fanatics to oppose mutant kind and to be enemies of mutantdom. And it's, a really ugly, hate-filled museum in that regard. But what the remainder of the issue really touches on is at the end of this little bit of a raid, we see these teenage mutants or these young mutants. They're really starting to talk about resurrection as an inevitability, as part of their life, as something cool, something that represents something.
Yeah, fad almost.
Yeah, and they talk about, she hasn't died yet, but then they see at this one moment, a mutant decides, what'll really screw with these fanatics? Guilt. And she walks in front of one and gets her head blown up by a shotgun. Ugh. And our boy Kurt does not take this well.
Oh, poor Kurt.
And that's what really launches him even further down his path on there's something amiss in their society, that they have missed something in the development of their society. And so Kurt, he talked a bit about a mutant religion, and he's not sure that is exactly the right word or that's what he's looking for. But he starts writing his notes, and we start getting these segments of what appear to be Kurt's notes documenting his search for answers for what to do about how to save a mutant soul. And what we get in this issue is he plays what seems like a playful prank on Magneto, of all people. And Magneto is, in true perfect Magneto fashion, able to immediately turn it around and use the prank to command the room and just turn it into a big dramatic speech about the testament of human folly in the face of mutant success. And he berates Kurt a little for these childish pranks, because even though he does not agree with the religious sentimentality of Kurt, he identifies that Kurt is on to something important. He doesn't tell Kurt to just give it up and go drinking at the lagoon.
Yeah.
He specifically treats Kurt in a way to encourage him to go down a path. And then we also see Kurt, he interacts with another mutant who is asking for help, asking for directions, asking for his help, and he's not giving this mutant the time of day. And he sort of blows this mutant off, and he goes off on his sort of quest, where he bumps into Dr. Nemesis. And Dr. Nemesis and he have a bit of conversations about what's going on Krakoa, what's going on with science, the soul, religion. It's a very philosophical book. It's really cool in that regard. And then the book ends with Kurt and Dr. Nemesis going to the Crucible, where we find that mutant who before was asking Kurt for help, she is now being killed by Magneto in the Crucible. And she looks up at him, and he looks on with horror, because she indicates, we get to choose who kills us, and I was told you're one of the gentler ones. And it's a very heart-wrenching scene for him. Mm-hmm. And it really sets him on his path that he knows something has to be fixed. And we see it in his writings, we see it in his monologuing, that he knows something has to be addressed in Krakoa. Because as well as all of this, interspersed is these creepy myths of the Patchwork Man following mutants around and scaring them. And we're seeing the newly resurrected Pixie. She sees something alarming in the distance, but doesn't really address it. And it's growing this sense of unease, both with the mutant society as a whole and with a potential threat looming in their ranks. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, after they resurrect that mutant from the Crucible and restore her powers, Xavier indicates why he called Kurt at the beginning of the issue, that he wants Kurt to do what he believes probably no other mutant can. He wants to send him to go and talk to Legion. Which is where this book ends off, leaving Kurt having just encountered Legion, and it's going to be an interesting little family drama there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So what did you think of Way of X?
It's hard to boil down all my thoughts, because I had so many in the way that I was thinking about this book. I think, to kind of put everything under one umbrella, what I really loved about it, oh god, I can't even do that. Okay, it's like two things under one umbrella. Number one, we'll call this 1A and 1B, if we're just putting it under one umbrella. 1A is seeing Kurt kind of react to these, I guess, weird cultural practices on Krakoa, like the Crucible, like this almost fetishized version of dying that younger mutants seem to have, like Magneto's ability to almost worship mutantdom in a way. Seeing Kurt's reaction to that as a man of God was just fascinating to me, because he just doesn't really know how to process it. He doesn't know what to do. And, he has that great conversation with Dr. Nemesis where he's just like, what does the religious man do when all the questions have been answered? And he's basically just like, you have to find newer questions to ask. But that's easier said than done. And it's really hard for him as someone who is so religious. And number two, I think, or I guess 1B, is just seeing how this book really digs into kind of the unsettling nature of some of the Krakoan culture, some of the aspects of Krakoan culture, and how younger mutants are really just eating up this whole anti-human rhetoric, and how they almost worship dying and being reborn, and seeing the brutality of the Crucible in action, particularly with mutants who are still trying to control themselves, and of course seeing how the people react to Magneto, and seeing the children around the campfire with Exodus talking about the Patchwork Man. Like, there's just so much going on with Krakoan culture. It's just just such a fascinating lens, and it feels like this is kind of what that issue of X-Men, and really what a lot of the issues of X-Men have been hinting at, but now we really have a book that's like digging into it and trying to explore it. So that's just like the the tip of the iceberg of my thoughts about this book, but it's just such a fascinating lens, and I had a really great time reading it.
Yeah, this book, I was blown away. I knew I was going to be excited by it, and this is really focusing, like you said, on those parts of Krakoa that, not to like make it sound too geeky, even though that's what this podcast is.
Yes.
You hear about, you read something fictional, and it's like, what if a society had this piece? What if a society had this? Mm-hmm. And you're left with these questions. Well, if the society was like this, people would behave differently about things like death and things like resurrection and Absolutely. God. And this book touches on all of those bigger questions on what the evolution of that society looks like in the most interesting way each time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it really could have been done very dull. It could have just shown us that, death is flippant.
Yeah.
But they chose a very visceral way to present that to us.
Oh, yeah. And kind of choosing one of the best characters to react to it, because you have someone like Kirk who, is a man of God and obviously has a Catholic perspective on what death is and what that means, and kind of seeing people almost relish death would be horrifying for him and for any Catholic or religious man of God. So I just think it's just such a perfect fit for that kind of exploration. Perfect character to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a great vehicle, and Nightcrawler is always just the host of such amazing stories.
Yeah.
And he's a good character, and he's a good character for this. Mm. What did you rate this issue?
I actually ended up giving this one a 9 out of 10. It was such a great first issue, and it's funny. Usually when I read books like with Nightcrawler, they tend to be more like lighthearted, because I feel like Nightcrawler is kind of more of a lighthearted character. But this issue is really somber, which I feel like I rarely ever get to see Kurt in that light, where he's a bit more, introspective. Usually he's, bursting into the scene, speaking German, waving his sword around, that sort of thing. But, this one was definitely a bit more reflective, and I don't know, it really just worked for me. So, like I said, I ended up giving this one a 9 out of 10. I had a great time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I gave this one a 9.5 out of 10.
Awesome.
I was a big fan of this book. I'm a big fan of seeing where it's going. I hope it goes good. I'm interested in what they're hinting at with the Patchwork Man and Kurt's journey. Legion in the past has not been a villain that I've resonated a lot with.
Yeah.
But seeing what they're doing right here with Nightcrawler and the mutants, I'm optimistic, and I think this is going to be a good arc.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Outside of anything else to really talk about in this issue, I do just want to bring up one, and this isn't an actual flaw with the issue, but it's something that the entirety of the X-Men current run has been guilty of, is the documents that they slide in between the pages.
Yeah.
Have this weird convoluted relationship with redacting. Mm-hmm. Where, they present this file, excerpt from the desk of so-and-so, from the book of what's his name, and they'll redact the name, even though the biggest thing with these that makes it why I have such a like a rock in my shoe about this is that because they have so far proved that they don't go back and unredact anything.
Yeah.
It's unlikely that they're ever going to reveal who this is in an interesting way. So for these ones in this one, it sounds like it should be Nightcrawler. It, for all intents and purposes, it pretty much is Nightcrawler writing these pages. But we're left to just not quite be 100% sure of that.
Yeah, I guess that's the mystery for now.
But so far, after what is now a year and a half
Mm,
of Dawn of X into now Reign of X,
mm,
I'm just seeing so much where they seem to just sort of redact random proper nouns
yeah.
and never go back to make them like relevant.
Mm,
And that's not a flaw with this book. It's just a minor flaw with all of sort of the recurring themes of X-Men. That like if you're going to redact something, I think it has to reward the reader later for like playing that mystery game,
yeah,
not
you
just
definitely
saying
need some
like
kind of payoff.
yeah. And I don't think we've gotten that in what they've shown with these documents so far. Some of
Yeah.
these documents have been great. I personally loved Dr. Nemesis' proposed hierarchy of science.
Yeah, that was pretty great. And like how he's basically just occupying all the like science roles on Krakoa. Like it's just him. That was phenomenal.
Right? It's just him, but I believe, if I remember right, and I'd have to look it up, I thought there was one that he didn't occupy.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, all I remember is it was a lot of Doctor Nemesis, and I think I was just like, all right, but there might have been one.
Right. There's one that is, there's one supervisory position that is vacant, and that is law and ethics.
Ah, of course, he wouldn't deign himself to that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, once again, highly recommend Way of X to all our listeners out there. If you're looking for an X-Men book to get in on, if maybe Hellions or Excalibur has earned less favor with you lately, highly recommend jumping in on Way of X.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Next, we'll go on to Beta Ray Bill. This is by writer Daniel Warren Johnson, with Daniel Warren Johnson also doing the art, with color by Mike Spicer and lettering by Joe Sabino. Brandon, I'll let you summarize Beta Ray Bill number 2.
Absolutely. So this issue picks up from the last one where Beta Ray Bill had left Asgard in an attempt to find himself a new weapon or some kind of power that would basically make him feel more comfortable with himself, or as he put it, that would make him feel beautiful again. So we pick up with Beta Ray Bill just kind of chatting back and forth with his ship, Scuttlebutt, where Scuttlebutt reveals that there is another life form that has, appeared on the ship, and they're not sure what it is. So Beta Ray goes to check it out, and that's when he discovers that the mysterious life form is actually Scourge from Asgard. And Thor Ragnarok fans might recognize Scourge because he goes on quite a lot about how even though he had died and was living in Valhalla, he was unhappy there because they didn't have guns. And how can you be in such a heavenly place without guns? It just seems ludicrous. So he he begged the people in Valhalla to basically let him go so that he could help Beta Ray on his quest. And he reveals that he knows where Odin is staying, which is where Beta Ray Bill is hoping to find, some kind of answer as to, how to make himself beautiful again and how to get another weapon. So they go to some shady bar, and get into a fight with a guy who's kind of picking on Beta Ray Bill for his appearance, and Scourge totally smacks him down, and that's basically where Odin shows up and basically says hey guys, cool it, I thought this was supposed to be a quiet bar. And so Beta Ray and Scourge catch up with Odin, and Beta Ray Bill basically just tells Odin of his problems and that he needs a new hammer. And so that's when Odin basically reveals that even though he had made Beta Ray Bill's previous hammer and imbued it with a certain magic, he just no longer has access to it, and he just can't summon that kind of magic anymore. And Beta Ray Bill just isn't having it because he served him so faithfully for years, and he can't believe that there's no other way. And I just kind of have to go on a side note here and say that I really love Bill's outfit, like in this scene, because it's like it's literally just like Beta Ray Bill obviously has, kind of the horse face, but it's literally just him in a t-shirt and a baseball cap.
Right?
It just looks like so casual, and it's just so funny to me because usually he's dressed in like, Asgardian garb or like really regal clothing, but it's just like casual wear. I think it's the baseball cap that really sells it for me, because when he's kind of yelling at Odin about how he's faithfully served him and how he needs a way to make himself normal again, it's with the baseball cap, and it just looks so silly. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's when Odin reveals that there is another place where he can find a weapon in Muspelheim, where he could take the sword of Surtur, known as Twilight, and potentially use that as a means to make himself normal again and get his power back. But it's no easy feat to get to Muspelheim, as we soon find out, because for one, Bill kind of refuses to use the Bifrost, which would be the easiest way to get to Muspelheim, and we know why he's a bit reluctant to use the Bifrost, given his kind of frosty relationship with Sif right now. But that's when we reveal that he basically has to go through a gate in a citadel that's being kept around a portal that will lead into Muspelheim. But the reality is that people who enter Muspelheim come out changed, and if they come out alive at all. And when they meet the guards at Muspelheim, who are basically kind of telling him, of the blackness that's within the realm, they basically reveal that, should you enter, things will be completely different when you come back out. But they decide to venture into it anyway. So Bill, Scourge, and another stowaway named Pip, who is also kind of, not happy with his current station, given that he's a troll, enter Muspelheim and basically see how terrible it looks. And that's when Scuttlebutt, Beta Ray Bill's ship, starts having some problems, and not really sure what's going on, but we see kind of some things wrapping together in the background. And shortly after that, we see that Scuttlebutt has essentially formed a new body, what appears to be a female body, that will potentially journey on with Bill, and that's where our issue ends. And in case you couldn't tell from the tone of my voice, I'm just really, really wrapped up in this story with Bill, and I just absolutely love the artwork from Daniel Warren Johnson. I'm a huge fan of Daniel Warren Johnson, and I would urge people who have not checked out his other books, particularly Extremity, over at Image, to go do so, because he's an absolutely phenomenal writer and artist. But I'm really just loving this kind of journey quest that Bill is going on to try and redeem himself in his own eyes, and he's kind of got a ragtag team of people following him around, and it's fun to see Scourge and all these other people just kind of team up with him. So it's a really fun read, a really solid read, and it pairs, I think, very nicely with the Thor book as well. So I had a really great time with it. How about you, Kirk?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying this story. I like the writing. I like Beta Ray Bill's journey in this, and I really, really like the art. Mm-hmm. The art is vaguely reminiscent of, I don't know if you've read anything by Tom Parkinson Morgan.
I have not.
But there's just some pieces of this. I'm a big fan of Tom Parkinson Morgan's Kill 6 Billion Demons series. And there's just a few panels in the way, specifically the way this, the one shot of Scuttlebutt, where it's like an X-rayed panel, and you can see into all the different rooms of the ship.
Yeah, that was great.
There's a shot like that in this book that, in Kill 6 Billion Demons, you see those quite a bit, and it's such a reminiscent shot, and I love it.
Yeah, it was absolutely phenomenal.
As far as the book goes, yeah, it's really good. The the journey into Muspelheim really interests me because not only did it change Scuttlebutt, but man, when I look at Scuttlebutt, I see this sort of almost Hellraiser-esque body in there. Like,
Oh yeah, for sure.
it's a little unsettling. It's not just, oh, she's an android. It's, oh, she's what?
Yeah.
So I've had a good time with this. The comedic timing between, the sort of subtle comedy notes of, Bill dressed in his shirt and cap, Scourge going on and on about guns in Valhalla, Scourge going on about being his wingman.
His wingman, yeah.
And, even the fight scene, that bar brawl.
Oh, God.
Gorgeously drawn.
Yeah, when, Scourge slaps the guy who's basically, mocking Bill. It's just like this just gorgeously illustrated panel of his hand just like slapping his cheek, and you can see his face almost move, and it has these great action lines in the background. It's followed immediately by him being slammed into the ground. It's just it's so beautiful to look at.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this one. I gave Beta Ray Bill issue number 2 an 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah, no, I gave this one an 8.5 as well. Just absolutely phenomenal read.
Awesome. With that, we will now go into our lightning reviews. For those who are joining us for the first time, our lightning reviews are quite a bit shorter than our other reviews, where we will spend a little bit less time on the summary and just go over the high-level notes that you need to read from this, and whether or not it was a recommended read or something you could give a miss to. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to start with America Chavez Made in the USA number 3 by Kalinda Vasquez, art by Carlos Gomez, coloring by Jesus Abertov, and lettering by Travis Lanham. This one continues where the last one left off. America was knocked unconscious at a place by a stranger who identified where she was as the Utopian Parallel, even though she's just on an island somewhere on Earth. The rest of the comic explains that this character is identifying herself as America's sister, who is a new thing for us. She shows that she has the stars on her wrists, and she seems to have similar powers to America, and she talks about how she knows why America's powers are fading, and it's because they are both, according to this, they both have Edges syndrome, which is an illness that they were both treated for as kids. If we are to believe what her sister is saying, that this island is actually a treatment center for kids with that illness, where they are exposed to some kind of magical vault that is full of power that gives the children these gifts, as well as healing or delaying their onset of Edges disorder. And the big revelation of this issue is that it implies that every single piece of America Chavez literature up until now has been wrong.
Oh wow.
I know this is a lightning review, so I'm going to try not to spend too much time on this, but the entire premise of this is that the Utopian Parallel does not exist. She is not from a society of superheroes. Her parents were regular businesswomen who were paying a billionaire who had a private island to fix their daughter. And somehow the fixing of their daughter led to her getting superpowers, and we haven't found out what would have happened to the two of them, because when they were superheroes trapped in the Utopian Parallel, that made sense. But now they're just women who abandoned America?
And I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, and it also, if you read Young Avengers' second run, America has a close tie-in with Wiccan, because apparently Wiccan is supposed to become the demiurge who creates Utopia and presides over it as like a deity.
Yeah.
And the demiurge has been a big part of Wiccan's ongoing story. But if America imagined her entire childhood, that's also not real.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I guess I'm just confused, because I didn't get a chance to read this issue, but I guess I'm just confused as to how they gave her powers that allowed her to, like, move across the different, dimensions and everything, because like I remember that being a big part of her power set, where she was kind of able
Mm-hmm.
to go into different dimensions, especially in the ultimates. But I, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's weird. Ugh.
either this, yeah, either this is a villain trying very hard to convince America that she's crazy,
Uh-huh.
in which case they're going to turn it around in the last two issues of this run, and it's going to be a cool little twist,
Mhm.
or they are dropping an entire, complete front to back retcon on America Chavez.
Oh, I hope it's not that last one. That would really suck.
Because right now, she now has a sister who has the same powers of her, and there's just this science facility on an island somewhere that a billionaire just throws the girls into this science facility, and it gives them, I'm going to exaggerate a little bit, some of the most powerful superpowers that we have seen on Earth 616. America Chavez has proven time and time again that her strength, speed, dimension hopping, flight far surpass most superheroes.
Yeah, yeah, for
She's
sure.
she's a primo powerful character, which, some people have, their own very valid issues with her as a character being that powerful. But they have now retconned that rather than her having these powers by being from the perfect dimension, she now was just a kid who was exposed to a science machine or something. It's not only a retcon. If it's a retcon, it is the most boring retcon.
Yeah, that would really like. I don't know. Like I said, I never really got the chance to read the solo series that she did, but I had read Young Avengers and I had read the Ultimates, which I was both big fans of, and I just loved the kind of unique take of her hopping from dimension to dimension and being this ultimate powerhouse that had this unique backstory of coming from a utopian parallel, but still trying to write crazy dimensions out there and also help out in 616. But if this is the new origin, man, that just really sucks. Like, that's so lame.
Yeah, and that was sort of my guttural response to this was I like America Chavez. She's a fun character. I liked her in the Young Avengers. I liked her in the West Coast Avengers. I liked her in the Ultimates. And I even enjoyed her well enough in the much maligned solo series by Gabby Riviera. A lot of people didn't care for that run, but I did. I enjoyed it. So I'm not sure where they're going with what seems to be, again, not just if this issue is to be taken as truth and not a narrative hokey pokey.
Yeah.
If this is actually the retcon, that she is just a girl who was taken to a science facility for a disease and came out crazy powerful. I don't know why we're not just covered in America Chavez super people.
Yeah, you'd think you'd have more.
But also, just a random, never before seen billionaire did it is not what I want her backstory replaced with. But
Yeah, no, that's supremely boring. That is ultimately boring.
so I gave this issue a 5.5 out of 10, only because honestly, it's well written. The plot is fine. The art is fine. It's all fine. But it just spends its full length of this issue telling us that if you liked anything about America Chavez up till now, it's all based on her being crazy delusional.
Yeah, oh well. I guess we'll have to see.
Right? So moving on, we've got Sword issue number 5 by Al Ewing, art by Valerio Schiti, color by Marte Gracia, and lettering by Ariana Marr. So Brandon, I'll hand this one over to you.
Absolutely. So this issue picks up with the resurrection of one Fabian Cortez, who basically is finally presented with his opportunity to speak in front of the Quiet Council and make his case on why the, as he calls them, flat scans should have new rules on whether or not, they should be murdered and mutants should be punished. And the whole issue just kind of revolves around him presenting his case in front of the Quiet Council. And, there's some really great moments where he's trying to define what is and isn't murder, whether letting people die of old age or even of diseases is considered or should be counted as murder. And ultimately, he is kind of taken down by Magneto, who's basically talking about how, we've all suffered at the hands of humans, and we've all, possibly reacted poorly at points. But, this whole experiment, this whole Krakoa opportunity is for us to basically step forward and say we're taking a new chance, and we have to make a place of laws. And he has this really great moment where he just says, we've all suffered, but if anyone has suffered, it's me, and I dare anyone, especially someone like you, Cortez, to look me in my eye and tell me that, and your sufferings have been worse than mine. And I think that one was just really powerful, considering all that Magneto has been through. I think he's still canonically a Holocaust survivor, so that especially has some extra weight to it. But we also get some resolution to other subplots involving the Snark War plot, which is also ongoing in the Guardians of the Galaxy series, which is where that was kind of initiated. And we kind of see one of the leaders of the Snark War try and make a case in front of the Kree Supreme Intelligence, and basically is murdered by an assassin. And it just kind of resolves the whole, chain of succession and who comes next after... Whoa, it's disappeared again. Oh, here we go. After Abigail Brand sends Amelia Vaught to basically determine who the next successor is going to be, and basically just wraps that up, and we kind of resolve everything. And then one of the other big reveals is that, at least for the time being, Fabian Cortez will be replaced by one of the Arakans, or people of Araco, known as Cora of the Burning Heart, who will basically be filling Cortez's place as the power builder. And so, yeah, it was just I think for me, the standout was absolutely seeing Fabian in front of the Quiet Council trying to make his case. It was just excellently written. And I think even more interesting was the fact that he had to do it in the nude, and still is as cocky and brash about it as Fabian Cortez would normally be. But just really digging into the whole philosophy of what is murder and what isn't murder, and seeing Fabian kind of duke it out in words, with various members of the council, was just really, really great. So I ended up giving this issue an 8.5. It's absolutely my favorite issue of Sword thus far, and I'm super excited to see where this series is going, especially if it involves more stuff. I can't believe I'm saying this, but with Fabian Cortez and other people basically trying to figure out what happens next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a really good issue. I gave this one an 8 out of 10. Mm-hmm. Next on our list, we have Hellions number 11 by Zeb Wells, with art by Steven Segovia, coloring by David Curiel, and lettering by Ariana Marr. Hellions 11 finishes up the arc where the Hellions are being captured and tortured by Mr. Sinister, and Arcade is using Sinister to set up a cloning facility. We find that Quanon Psylocke has usurped some of Mastermind's control and has combined her simulation with Scalp Hunter's sort of imagined reality, and is slowly using her psychic powers to bring them together. Mastermind's control is weaker if she can fuse their consciousness against his. And then it cuts also to Mr. Sinister building the cloning facility. He has had a recent root canal from Arcade,
Hmm.
So he spends most of the issue talking with a very written speech impediment.
Oh dear.
It's hilarious the way he's written. He's depicted with his mouth all swollen up and
Yeah.
teeth missing. But between him and the Hellions, they end up pulling one over on Arcade and pulling a fast one on him.
Hmm.
And the Hellions break out of the simulation, and they successfully use Mastermind to free both Mastermind's family from Arcade's control and the guy who was threatening Mastermind's family, his family, because Arcade just threatens families all the way down.
Yeah.
And what this ends up being is we find out that Mastermind and Sinister had been plotting to betray Arcade this whole time, and this was just Sinister's secret way of getting a clone facility off Krakoa's books. And the only one who finds out the truth, as Mastermind convinces all the Hellions that they actually staged an epic breakout and saved Sinister, and they all can now corroborate this perfect story where Sinister tried to save them, but it backfired, so they had to save him. And but the only one who knows the truth is Quanon, and she is unhappy with being a pawn in Sinister's game. This was a fun issue. It kept the interactions going between Sinister, Arcade, and Sinister and Quanon, and it indicated a budding relationship between her and Scalp Hunter.
Oh yeah.
That there's some attraction growing there. But it's an enjoyable read, if still just kind of a stopover in the Hellions being sort of this kooky X-Men side story. Enjoyable enough, though. I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I thought this was also a fun issue. I checked this one out, and yeah, I had a really good time with it. Or I guess, just in kind of Hellions fashion. So I also gave this one a 7.25 out of 10. But yeah, it's a solid read.
Awesome. All right, next we have Eternals number 4, but with writing by Kieran Gillen, art by Asad Ribic, coloring by Matthew Wilson, and lettering by Clayton Cowles. Brandon, I'll let you summarize this one.
Absolutely. So this issue kind of just revolves around Kingo and Thena basically trying to confront Druig, who they feel is the prime suspect right now for the murder of Zurus. And so a lot of the issue deals with the backstory between Kingo and Druig and the last time that they kind of had to confront each other about something. And it deals a lot with, our history, world history, where Druig was basically serving the court of the Khan Empire, and Kingo is kind of unhappy about the way that he had been riding with some of the savages of the Khans, and how they'd basically just been burning place to place as much and as often as they could. So a lot of it deals with that. And so they're basically accusing Druig of, betraying the Eternals and having a hand in Zuras's death. And that's when they reveal that, Zuras didn't do it, because Thanos shows up and manages to, take out Druig, and the rest of the Eternals are kind of forced to try and put him down as quickly as they can, and try and resolve that as much as they can. But Thanos is able to escape via the machine before they're able to really lock anything down. And so Thena and Kingo are basically able to just, clear Druig of any suspicion, stating that, clearly he couldn't have had a hand in the murder if Thanos, was here to kill him. And so they both leave, and that's when Thanos shows back up and basically, says, you kind of were communicating to me that this was all a ruse, and clearly you have some deeper ulterior motives. And that's kind of when Druig reveals that, I'm not the traitor, but if you'd wanted one, you could have just come to me, and I would have been happy to oblige. There's also kind of some plot development with Sprite and Icarus, who are still watching over the kid, Toby Robeson, I believe his name is, and they're basically just keeping an eye on him, and that's really all you need to know. But mostly the issue focuses on Kingo, Druig, and Thena, as well as a brief little check-in with Cersei, who is gonna be basically relaying all the information about the Eternals to Tony Stark, because Tony and Cersei are the ones that have the best relationship, at least in respect to the other Eternals. So yeah, no, I this series is so great and so fascinating, and such an interesting look at the Eternals, and I think in this age of the Krakoan X-Men, it's so great to have like this really interesting exploration of kind of another lesser known team. I mean, the X-Men are not lesser known, but they'd kind of been in a weird place until we got the whole Krakoa thing, and so it's nice to see another property kind of have this really interesting reinvention, and that also makes use of data pages and that sort of thing. So it's a series that's just really amazing, and I mean, I would be an idiot if I didn't mention how wonderful the art by Asad Ribic is. It's just gorgeous, and there's so many great panels, especially during the flashbacks with Kingo and Druig, during the time where he's serving in the Khan Empire, and you can really just see the epic landscapes as well as even some of the quieter moments that really just shine throughout this issue. So I'm having such a great time reading this book, and I'm always fascinated to see what they'll bring with each issue. So I gave this one an 8.5.
Yeah, I really liked it. I gave it an 8.5 as well. It's just, the art is gorgeous and the story is really interesting, and I can't wait to see what they're doing. And seeing Thanos in this art style,
oh, so great.
Really great. Yeah.
Because Asad Ribic has only ever gotten to draw Thanos another time, and that was in Secret Wars, and he looked so awesome there. So like getting to see him draw Thanos again, and in kind of like this badass way where he's just putting down the Eternals like it's nobody's business. It's so great. We've had like 2 awesome takedown scenes this week. We've had Thanos taking down Thena and Kingo and Druig, and we've also had Hulk taking down the UFOs. I don't know what it is this week. We had some pretty badass takedowns.
Right? Some real good takedowns, good smackdowns.
Yeah.
All right. The next issue on our list is Champions number 6 by writer Danny Lore, art by Luciano Vecchio, color by Federico Blee, and lettering by Clayton Cowles. This one I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. This is the start of the new Killer App arc. We see now that in the the post-mortem of the Kamala's Law arc, even though the law is still in effect, the champions are now a little bit more free to fight crime. They're not being actively hunted and persecuted by Cradle anymore. It starts with them having a bit of a showdown with some bank robbers. But they find out after they leave that the bank robbers that they were fighting were actually hired bank robbers to test a security test, and that the bank was not counting on superheroes showing up. So the champions go through a bit of drama that they're still not quite the best at superheroism. They can't even properly identify when they're needed. And then it really launches into the crux of this arc, is that Roxxon is being shady, as always. Roxxon is sort of pushing towards their usual kind of too much, like very, totalitarian business, like friendly company that's obviously got like sinister undertones. Roxxon's usual look lately.
Oh yeah, no, it's clear that something's a little off there.
Yeah, and then so we see the champions reacting to what Roxxon's doing and the protests against Roxxon, and how the champions essentially resolve to go against Roxxon. and it ends with the tease of a future threat to the champions that they're going to be dealing with. And as far as the start for this arc, I thought it was a serviceable entry into the arc. It sort of touches a little bit on what we just closed with Kamala's Law. It reminds us that it's still a law. It's still illegal for them to be out vigilanteing. They're just not being hunted anymore. And then they're kind of going into what looks like regular champions affair with them targeting a big guy who's picking on little people.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed this. The art is still really good. The writing is fun. Sometimes you get these teenage teams and they're written really not great because they're written by people who haven't been teenagers in a long time.
Exactly.
But I can't think of any examples where this one really rubbed me the wrong way at all. So I enjoyed it, and I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, no, I also really enjoyed this issue. I think just because I think there were, even though there was kind of a lot going on, and they're definitely trying to get to this new Roxxon angle, there were some quieter moments that really had the champions kind of reflect on everything that they went through, and I really kind of enjoyed that whole arc of them dealing with Kamala's Law. So kind of seeing Ironheart confront the team and basically try and figure out, well, how do we go, from here, given everything that's happened, given especially that Viv was kind of the one that was, ratting everyone out. And there's a great scene with, Ironheart and Miles, and they're kind of talking and relating, and I felt like that was definitely needed. These solid moments where you can kind of just really just let everything out and talk and reflect on everything that had happened. But I think that definitely on definitely gonna have some interesting stuff happening soon, especially given that the teaser that we had in issue 5 where we saw Miles and Sam basically becoming new interns at Roxxon. So my guess would be that that's probably going to happen next issue, and we'll figure out what's really going on with Roxxon and this whole new app. But yeah, no, it was a pretty solid issue. So I gave this one a 7.25 out of 10.
Awesome. And our last lightning review for the day is Black Knight, Curse of the Ebony Blade #2. By C. Spurrier, with art by Sergio Davila, with Sean Parsons, color by Arif Prianto, and lettering by Corey Petit. Take it away, Brandon, on this one.
Absolutely. So this issue is even though there are some dense moments, not a ton happens in the story. Basically, they're dealing with the fallout of the last issue, where Dane is kind of struggling with the fact that he died and was able to come back to life, and he realizes that's a new aspect of carrying the Ebony Blade, that you essentially can't die. And so a lot of the issue revolves around Dane kind of learning about the true origins of the Ebony Blade, and the fact that when it was not forged alone, but it was forged with a couple other artifacts, a chalice, a shield, and I believe a staff as well. Basically, that could all be used as weapons potentially to the person that was able to gather them, and all of them would be used as weapons by the Black Knight. Should he want to choose them, but apparently the Black Knight really only chose the sword. And so that's just kind of what he's used as his main weapon. And this is all kind of under the backdrop of, some guy basically going around killing history professors to try and find something, but we're not really sure what it is yet. So that all comes in later. But meanwhile, at Dane's castle, a mysterious stranger breaks in and kind of tries to assault Dane, and basically he's trying to figure out what's going on. Why are these historians all being murdered? And this mysterious assailant tracked it to Dane Whitman, and That's when the assailant basically reveals herself to be Elsa Bloodstone, and is kind of on the lookout for what's going on with the deaths of these history professors, and she's giving Dane a lot of shit because Dane's kind of being patronizing and calling her a chick and everything, and she's not having any of it, and they're about to go to blows, but that's when the history student named Jax, I believe, is basically just talking about the origins of the blade, and how the other treasures that had basically been forged were not lost, but in fact they were stolen by someone else, and that's when we reveal who the big bad is, who's kind of been going around killing history professors trying to find something, and we reveal that the big bad is Mordred, and he's basically been looking for these artifacts and some kind of attempt to make himself more powerful. This issue I think was a little bit slower than the first issue, just because it spent a lot of time digging into the origins of the Ebony Blade and the artifacts, so it didn't really get a chance to progress the actual story as much as I would have liked. I find the lore to be fascinating just because I don't really know that much about Black Knight to begin with, but again, I do wish that they'd kind of taken the time to progress the story just a little bit more. But it was nice to see Dane kind of talking about the fact that he died and he used to suffer with that, and seeing him basically just fighting with Elsa Bloodstone was also really entertaining. So there's some really solid moments in this issue, but overall I'd say it's a little bit of a drop from the first issue, but still solid nonetheless. So I ended up giving this one a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I had a good time with this. I liked the exposition, but it was a little dense and it was a little long, drawn out for compared to what else happens in this issue.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I really didn't really get into the issue until it was already pretty much over, with Elsa Bloodstone and Mordred being sort of dropped on us in the end there.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of excited to see both of those characters hopefully throughout the rest of this series. I hope Elsa sticks around for a little bit. I do enjoy her usually. She's a good time. And I think she could be a really cool supporting character in something that's very Arthurian and filled with that legacy. So I gave this one a 7.25 out of 10.
Cool.
All right. That's it for our reviews. So now let's both share our top 3 and our favorite panel or moment. Do you want to go first, Brandon?
Sure. So at number 3, I had a two-way tie between Eternals and Sword. I tried really, really hard. I could not distinguish between the two, which one I enjoyed more. They were just phenomenal, and I was just like, screw it. You both get number 3 for this week, so that's how it's got to be. Number 2, I had Immortal Hulk. Just another great issue, and if I could have more issues of the sassy, take no shit, Joe Fixit Hulk as a cosmic powerhouse, I would be very, very happy. And at number 1, I had Way of X, just such a phenomenal new entry into the Dawn of X, I guess technically now Reign of X titles, and a fascinating look at Krakoan culture, as well as a really great character study on Nightcrawler. So there was just a lot of great stuff there. And my favorite moment of the week, I think I already mentioned, but it was that double-page spread of Thor basically throwing his hammer into the Joe Fixit Cosmic Hulk's face, and you could really see the power behind the throw, because his face is just curling upwards, and it's just a really beautifully drawn panel, and I just absolutely loved it.
Awesome. Yeah, it is a really good panel. My top 3 for this week, at third place, we had Beta Ray Bill 2, just a great book. I really enjoyed it, and I'm really excited to see where it's going to go with them in Muspelheim. At number 2, earning its place as always in my top 3 is this issue of Immortal Hulk. Number 46, Joe Fixit is great. Cosmic Hulk is great. We already gushed enough about clobbering the UFOs and his interactions with Thor. It's just a really good entry in the book. Al Ewing writing some great interactions between Joe Fixit and some characters.
I know. I could not get over him quoting Cheers. It was just so funny. Where he's just like, the people are just running. And I think that's just like such a great background gag as well. Where like people are running out the door and he just turns to them and he's just like, they look real glad I came.
Right?
It's just like, oh my god, it's just too great.
Yeah. Oh, and the one panel that really got me was the other Cheers reference right before that, where he walks in and someone goes, "Oh, it's the Hulk!"
Yeah,
and he says, "Huh? They really do know your name." Like,
it's just like he's so casual about it. Oh, I love it.
So good. Yeah. And my number one, as if it's any surprise, is also Way of X. Just a great launch to a series that I hope is going to impress me all the way down. We get Nightcrawler being awesome. We get cool, creepy moments of Krakoan society and what it could mean for things to come. And we even get Magneto delivering a spontaneous sermon in the middle of a bar.
Love it.
But, as always, we read a lot of comics around here, and we don't always read good ones. So, it is now time for The Biggest Stinker.
Oh, that's nasty.
All right, Brandon, what was your lowest of the low this week?
Well, this one probably shouldn't come as a surprise, but my biggest stinker for this week had to be Heroes Reborn, number 1. Just, like I said, really disappointing. I mean, actually, I don't even know that disappointing is the right word, because it's not like I was expecting much from this book. So really, it's not like it let me down. It was just kind of what I expected it to be, kind of, uninteresting and schlocky. And the fact that they were really, really leaning into the whole Justice League thing, but without any, cool characterization to match or anything else to add, it just didn't really do it for me. So aside from the visual references to the League, it just felt really flat and just did not work for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Heroes Reborn also earns my my biggest stinker of the week for the same reasons. I just found it dull and not very interesting, with one caveat being that if the America Chavez retcon is permanent, and this is a full retcon, I think I will hold that against this issue, and I will retroactively award it my biggest stinker for this week. But if issue 4 or 5 undoes any part of this retcon and makes it a little easier to swallow, then yeah, Heroes Reborn is the worst one for this week.
Yeah. Oh god, I hope that's really not the case, because that retcon that you described, it's so lame.
It really is, and I really hope if they are retconning pieces about her past, it's just not this comprehensive.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, it's really just now she invented her whole life. Well, that's the show, everyone. Thank you all so much for listening. And remember to go to notarobotpodcast.com for all our episodes and all of our other shows with all sorts of people covering everything you might like. And remember to check out our Patreon. We have tiers starting at just $1 a month that you can use to support us and all the content you love. With that said, as always, there's only one way we say goodbye around here.
Be good to each other.
And don't be a robot.